Well, welcome everybody. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Kerr, and I wear many hats at All Souls. Usually I have my All Souls hat on, and I tell people what that hat is all about at the end of my introduction, but I left my many 14 different All Souls colored hats at home, so I'm hatless tonight. But I do wear many hats here at All Souls. One of the hats I wear is I'm the senior warden, and one of the things that comes with that job is I'm the guy who gets to open the doors of the church every morning, which is a nice job to have, because sometimes when I open the doors of this church around sometime between 5 and 6, there's often people waiting to come in. The other job I have as senior warden is I get to paint the steps. So a lot of good, really highfalutin duties with the senior warden. So on behalf of our congregation, on behalf of Father Tom Reese, who's our priest in charge, it's my privilege to welcome you to this concert. And as many of you know, if you didn't know it, you'll know it now, this is a historic structure. Now, somewhere in my life, I always wanted to work at a movie theater. So this is a historic structure. And what does it mean when you're at a historic structure? That means you're on the National Registry of Historic Places. And if you look at this plaque right here in the back, I'm not expecting you to read it that far, you'll see that's All Souls Church, formerly known as St. James Chapel. You might say, gee, what's that all about? Well, this church, when it was built in 1896, was actually built as a chapel for the larger Episcopal Church in St. James Chapel. And Stanford White, who was probably the most famous architect at the end of the 1800s, designed this as a summer chapel for a friend of his who summered in Stony Brook. So we are a historic structure. And oftentimes when people think of Stony Brook, they think of Ward Melville High School. They know about the Ward Melville Heritage Organization. Just about a large portion of this town has the name Ward Melville associated with it. And we revere Ward Melville and respect him. But long before Ward Melville sold his first shoe, when he was president of Buster Brown Shoe Companies, which is where he made his fortune, he was not Stony Brook's first millionaire. Stony Brook's first millionaire was actually, you can't see the names back there, but that window, if you guys go a little bit to the left, a little to the right, probably just screwed up the choreography there. You'll see here that that is in honor of Jonas Smith, and over there, over Miguel's shoulder, it's in honor of Nancy Smith. So Nancy Smith and Jonas Smith, to give you some idea of their wealth, the Three Village Inn was their summer home. He wasn't always a wealthy man. He came here as an orphan with $1, but he worked hard and he built a fortune. And he and Nancy died long before this church was built, but the land that this church sits on was donated by their niece, something Pettit Norton. It's a little summary about her in the history here. So we are a historic structure. We're proud of that. We are open every day. And you'll notice when you came into the church, there's a copy of our mission statement. On the back of our brochure, our little concert flyer, there's a copy of our mission statement. On the copy of the church brochure, there's a mission statement. So we must take that mission statement seriously. And in that mission statement, I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm going to read one statement. It says, we strive to be mutually supportive of the personal spiritual journey, respecting the individuality of all and accepting the value of meeting people wherever they are on that journey. So Father Tom, our priest in charge, says that we like to practice radical hospitality, which means we welcome people of all faiths, all backgrounds. We welcome people without faith. Everyone is welcome at All Souls. And actually everybody is on a spiritual journey of some sort. If you happen to be on an Episcopal spiritual journey, we do 2 services on Sunday. We do an 8 o'clock live virtual service, which you can access through our website. It's only a half hour long. And we do a 9:30 Eucharist here in the church. We have, congregation is small. So the other hat I have is on the membership chairman here. So we have about 90 people if you include recently baptized babies and people living in nursing homes. But if you include our relationship with people in the community, the people who are friends of the church, it's actually over 850 people we have a relationship with. Our Brookhaven Town representative, our councilman, Jonathan Conright, has several times recently described us as the heart and soul of Stony Brook Village. And I said, well, why are we the heart and soul, Jonathan? He said, well, the doors of the church are open every day. We feed the hungry. So those of you who bought food, thank you. That goes directly. My wife Susan brings that a couple of times a week to St. Gerard Mejia, a Catholic church over in Terryville. They feed a couple hundred families. So we feed the hungry. And we do these concerts. This is, I realize there's some people here probably for the first time, but this is not a one-shot deal. We do these concerts every month, Saturdays at 6. And there will always be 2 or 3 phone calls I'll get. They'll say, what time is the Saturdays at 6 concert? And I never tire of saying it's at 6 o'clock. So we do the concerts once a month. We also do poetry hosted by the Poet Laureate of Suffolk County, Dr. Richard Bronson. We do poetry once a month called Second Saturday's Poetry. We do Native American drumming once a month as well here. And also, that's something we do monthly. During the week, we're an interfaith center. So we do an interdenominational morning prayer service that my friend Tom Brownworth, who also doubles as our photographer, is from Messiah Lutheran Church. He and I lead a interfaith morning prayer service every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And we bring in visiting clergy. So we bring in, actually the guy who's going to be giving the homily next Tuesday is well known to our Caroline colleagues. It's Father Nick is going to be here delivering the homily. We've had the Father Lou from the Greek Orthodox Church. We've had Rabbi Benson from the Jewish Center in Port Jefferson. We've had Josh from the Three Village Church. We've had Father Bob from the Roman Catholic Church. We've had Iman Abdul from the Selden Mosque as well. So we do an interdenominational morning prayer service here. And also we do an interdenominational rosary. You may not have heard, hey, what do you mean interdenominational? Oh, we figured out how to do it, merging the Greek Orthodox tradition, the Roman Catholic, and the Anglican tradition as well. My wife Susan leads that program. That's on Wednesdays at noon. And once a year, we do 2 things. We do the race, and we're coming up on our 15th year. And that race is called Souls for All Souls. And it does 2 things. It celebrates the role of this church in the community, and also it raises funds to make this church accessible. Some of you found a little bit of a hike getting up those stairs. We feel your pain. When Stanford White designed this church, you know what the life expectancy was in the U.S.? 49 years. So they didn't really care too much about accessibility. And those of you who are regulars know we don't have a bathroom in the church, which is a real inconvenience when you used to have to send people down to Fratelli's, and then it became the gristmill. And now they're closed, so we have to tell you that our bathrooms are provided by Mama Mia's, our Sweet Mamas. All right, I make mistakes. Sweet Mamas. Sweet Mamas, okay. I probably made a mistake. Sweet Mamas, so they've given us permission to use their bathroom. That's why I put her on the cover of the brochure. So hopefully by next concert, that Sweet Mamas will be open. And the long-term vision. Herb Moniz, who many of you know is a local community leader, head of the Civic Association, has led many complex projects. He's actually leading that project. We've raised over $70,000 towards that project through the race and donations of friends of the church. And we've got a plan. We've got 4 or 5 different plans to do it, and we are going to do it. I mentioned all the different outreach programs we did: concerts, poetry, Native American drumming, and so forth. If you want to be on our mailing list, I promise not to ask you for money, but I will invite you to our events. Just put your name and email here. I'll leave this up here during intermission. So tonight's program, there'll be 2 sets of music. We will also have time for questions at the end. Sue, could you stand by the thank you jar? So we've got 5 students, 4 struggling graduate students, have to put gas in their car and food in their mouth. So if you'd like to say thank you, you put that in there for the musicians. I count it, I don't keep any. All goes to them. Okay, and we'll get you out of here by 8 o'clock. Okay, 8 o'clock, before 8 o'clock. All right, so we do a 15-minute intermission. We don't have a pretentious man with a triangle and a tuxedo to let you know it's time to come back. We do something far more impressive. We ring the bell and we play with the lights. Okay? So that'll be your sign to come back. So let me now welcome the Voyager Reed Court Quintet. This is a group of music graduate students from an interesting combination, Stony Brook University and Rutgers University. Their repertoire includes 21st century works with a strong emphasis on rhythmic patterns and grooves, as well as an arrangement of classical pieces. You'll see all the pieces they'll perform will be in that little concert bulletin that we gave you. So let me introduce the musicians. They'll wave and give them a round of applause. Dan Shakwan on oboe. I'll do them in the order of the playbill outside. I'm not just standing in the same order. Jared Apple on alto saxophone. I think they're in the same order. Miguel Posadas on bassoon.
Timothy Hanley on bass clarinet, bass clarinet. And this must be Nikhil Bartolomeo on clarinet. Let's give a big All Souls welcome to the Voyager Evening Team.
Hello, I'm Dan. I play oboe, and this is my instrument. Well, it might look like a clarinet, but the essential difference is that I play through a double reed, which is in the same family as the bassoon. The mechanism behind the sound making is vibration between two bamboo canes that essentially are removed through reed. Scraped by hand and made all by hand, tied all together into a tube that connected through a cork to my instrument. And by the reed itself, the instrument sounds like. And we as oboists have to make the reed itself in tune, in a pitch, in the C, so that when it attached to the instrument, it will sound like. So the next piece that we're going to play is called Le Tombeau de Couperin, and it was written by French composer Maurice Ravel in early 20th century. It was his gesture to pay homage to Baroque French suites, keyboard suites. And there's actually a couple of hints in the name of this piece that shows this gesture of homage. The first is the name Tombeau. It was a really famous and well-known musical form in the Baroque period in the 17th century. It means a piece written as a memorial. And the second one is the name Couperin. It stands for a French composer who's really famous and was really the origin of instrumental music, Francis Couperin. And also by the names of the movements. The first movement was it's called a prelude. It's very generally applied to all the first movements of French suites. And the last one is fugue, and that was also a musical form that was really famous and well known, well applied in the Baroque period. So we're gonna play two movements of the piece Le Tombeau de Couperin, prelude and fugue.
two movements from La Tombe de Couperin by Ravel. The next piece on the program is very special to me. So it was written originally by the composer Jean Sibelius from Finland. And as you can see, it's a very early opus number, opus 5, which means he wrote it very early in his career. When Sibelius was still young, he had aspirations of being a violin soloist, and he often tried to play with many of the orchestras in his area when he was growing up. And unfortunately, he never quite found, it was never found that he quite had the talent to be a concertmaster, to be a violin soloist with any of the orchestras. But luckily for us and many other musicians, he found his calling as a composer. So in this piece, it was originally a set of 6 piano pieces. You sort of hear a very wistful Sibelius, who's imagining his dreams of being a soloist, of being a performer, and imagining that these dreams may not come to fruition in the way that he originally had thought in his career. They were originally piano pieces, as I said at first, and later in life, toward the end of his career actually, Sibelius went back and arranged 2 of the 6 impromptus for string orchestra, and that's how I came to know this piece. And the very first time I heard it, I was very struck by it, and I thought to myself, I have to arrange this for our reed quintet. And so that's what I've done. So I hope you enjoy this arrangement of Sibelius's arrangement of piano impromptus opus 5.
to end the beginning of the first half. We're gonna finish off with the Preludes by Gershwin. Now, this piece was originally composed for piano. However, our arranger here, who we could not do this without, has arranged it for a reed quintet. And it starts with a faster, quicker movement and ends with a quicker movement, but it's sandwiched between with a bluesier movement with some auxiliary instruments featuring the English horn and the E-flat clarinet. Now, the E-flat clarinet is a little bit smaller than the clarinet, which means it'll go higher in pitch. And the English horn has a similar timbre, but it's also bigger, therefore creating a different sound. So I hope you guys enjoy these. They're cute and fun and very enjoyable.
All right, welcome back for the second half. Before I introduce the next piece, I got a specific request to talk a little bit about this instrument. This is the bass clarinet, which is related to the clarinet, and it is about twice the size and a little bit thicker, so it sounds an octave lower, much like if you look at the difference between like a violin and a cello. Similar design, plays much lower. Actually invented in the 19th century by Adolphe Sax, the same guy that invented the saxophone. You might notice a little bit of similarity in the shape. Yeah, and so it is longer, so it sounds lower, and he's also added a mechanism on the back to play with the thumb, which is very different than the clarinet and allows for some really low bass notes that go below the range of the clarinet, hence the nice big bell at the bottom. They're usually metal. Mine has a nice, really pretty wood one that I love, but you'll often see this with the metal bell as well. And it came around like 1850s, something like that. So in the world of classical music, it is a very new instrument. In our modern world, still kind of old, but it's wonderful. Anyway, so this next piece is Refraction by David Biedenbender. He's a living composer. He writes a lot of really wonderful music, a lot for winds, and especially larger wind ensemble. You'll see his music programmed on like large band concerts as well. This was written for Acropolis Reed Quintet, which is based out of Detroit. They're probably the premier American group of this configuration. It's a little bit different than some of our other pieces. Refraction, the title, much like light refracting through a prism, so it's very multifaceted. The first movement, you might notice, had a very funny title. He was inspired by a video he found online of a metal band playing, and a rooster heard it and just yelled on top of it. And that is what it's very short, very fun movement. And then the second movement is a Kyrie, reference to the Catholic Mass. Very interestingly, for Michaud, a very early classical music composer, and Hervé Pert, a very progressive composer more recently. So it's interesting that it's dedicated to both of them. And the third movement is Goat Rodeo, which he describes as just a lot of things going on all at once, much like goats at the rodeo. So it'll be an adventure of a piece, but it is a really cool new work that we're excited to play for you guys today. Okay. So that one was all over the place. I hope you enjoyed it and had a little fun with us. And now we're going to play something completely different. This is another arrangement by our wonderful Nikhil called Hunting Wappets by Gordon Goodwin. If you don't know, Gordon Goodwin famously has an incredible big band that he writes all kinds of charts for, really that like 20s style big band, but still today, and he's very active and incredibly well put together. He does a bunch of tunes for them, and this is, you can tell by the title, kind of based on that like Looney Tunes, romping around in a cartoon, nice, light, fun, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. So thank you once again to everyone for coming out and making the time to come support live music and live musicians. It really means a lot to us. We will be ending our program the same way we started, because it is the second half of Mark Melitz's piece, originally written for an ensemble of this configuration by the name of Splinter. Each movement, as you might have been able to deduce, is referencing a different type of tree that you might find in the world. And so with a piece as long as this, we thought it was appropriate to break it up into two distinct sets and start with it and end with it. So thank you once again for coming out. Thank you again to the church for hosting us and having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to everyone who has generously donated to help fund our touring and performing efforts. So we hope you enjoy the second half of Mark Melitz's Splinter.
So it's our tradition here to leave a few moments at the end if anyone has any questions, the musicians. I have one maybe to get it. Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
I was just wondering about the blue lights two of the stands at.
Yeah,
What is that for?
of course. So
That's what I thought.
some of us have decided to move our sheet music.
Yeah,
Onto an
that's
iPad.
what I figured, but sometimes you do it so much.
Right, and one of the problems with an iPad, if you notice the difference between both of our stands, is I only get one page at a time, and they get two. So we have double the page turns, and if I'm sitting here playing like turn, 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 so they've developed these page turning pedals
I figured
where you just click it and it flips the page for you. So, especially for these very long, fast works where you don't have time, it's very, very helpful.
It means it's connected.
Yeah, the blue means it's on, yeah. Lets us know without knowing that it's on, yeah.
So how the connection between Rutgers and Stony Brook?
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Can I say it or you?
You go for it.
So, in the before times, before COVID-19, Nikhil and I actually did our masters together at the Boston Conservatory in Boston. And we started a group of this configuration that, of course, got interrupted by the pandemic. And, you know, he ended up at Stony Brook, and I ended up at Rutgers, and we're like, hey, we're kind of close, and we can maybe meet somewhere and try to get this going again. And so we networked, you know, a couple people from Rutgers, a couple people from Stony Brook, and we decided to meet in the middle in New York, in the city, and we rehearsed there. So that's kind of meet in the middle, and that's how we got Rutgers and Stony Brook together.
There's a poem in my head that I've got to write, the good things that came out of COVID, I can add that to the list. I've always been interested by the bassoon.
Yeah.
It's a very funky instrument.
You know what? It really is. I started out on saxophone just like Jared. And then I actually ventured into the oboe, like, you know, it was all just too easy, so. Kidding. So, I mean, I just tried this and it's, you know, it's been a challenge ever since.
What's kind of the history of that instrument? I mean,
So, it started off as like one stick with like 3 holes, 4 holes, you know, a couple keys, very, you know, the classical era bassoon. And over time, just like the rest of the instruments, we developed more keys and more buttons in order to further increase the flexibility and resonance of the instrument. And so now it looks like this, but it's gone through certainly a amount of stages in between.
I know bassoon is definitely longer than you thought it is because it
Yeah.
curved. It curved down the
It
bottom.
curves down here at the
Which
bottom.
is covered by that steel pad with, yeah.
So it's all connected down here.
So I think older bassoons used to be
Just straight.
Yeah.
straight,
Yeah.
which,
And they're very long.
yeah, really visible in the orchestra.
How much does that weigh? You lifted it up.
You know what?
It's very
Too much.
strong.
Thank you. Nah, we'll go with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's definitely unique. And I think when people think about a bassoon, they think, you know, very lumpy, boring, low, and not exactly what this repertoire demands. So I think, you know, one of the best parts of playing in a group like this is that I'm not stuck on the bass line just playing whole notes and low notes, and I'm very much playing virtuosic stuff, just like the rest of the guys.
And that's one of the advantages of this configuration. Many of you have maybe seen a traditional woodwind quintet before with the flute and the French horn, clarinet, oboe, and bassoon, and it's great and it's wonderful. But this newer woodwind quintet configuration as the reed quintet really allows the composer the flexibility with two bass voices now. You know, the bassoon can show off some of its flexibility while the bass clarinet takes over and vice versa. And then the saxophone replacing the French horn really adds the technical flexibility that an incredible virtuoso French hornist can attempt, but having the alto voice being the same woodwind as us, you know, that voice can do the same technical passages that we do. And this was really only started in like 1985 in the Netherlands, so it's a very new ensemble configuration that we're still exploring. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Steve.
When you converted the pieces from the piano to the instruments, did you have to do it for each instrument, or is it just the same set of music, and then each person takes it from there?
Yeah, so it's definitely each of our 5 parts are very different from one another. It's not the same set of music for a couple of reasons. One being is that we all play in different keys. So the oboe, for example, is in C, is in concert pitch. The alto saxophone is in E flat. Miguel and the bassoon is in C, and Tim and I on clarinets are in B flat. So there's all these different transpositions and adjustments that have to be made, even for us to just play the same unison note. We would read several different notes. And so when you're adapting something like a piece of piano music, obviously pianist has 10 fingers, so there are many different voices that can occur, even though it's just the one player playing. And so as an arranger, my job is to then adapt that, condense and distribute that into the 5 voices that we have in this ensemble type.
Yeah, we leave that job to the smart one.
Yes.
Miguel has touched on a bit, but I just wanted to know from each of you, like, what drew you to your instrument?
Sure. Why don't we go from oboe?
Oboe was always recognized as the rare instrument that people study because Guinness record says it's the hardest instrument in the world to learn. So yeah, when I started, my band teacher just said there's no one playing it and you might get a future playing this rare instrument. So that's how I started.
So I actually started as a young tyke as a violinist, and studied that through all of my childhood, and got to school and said, this is what I want to do. If you ask me all the way up even through most of high school, that was what I wanted to do. But I was in a school system that didn't have orchestra, and I wanted to do music, and my sister did choir, so I couldn't do that. That was her thing. I had to get my own thing, and so I joined band, and just sort of happened upon the saxophone. And it wasn't until I was, in high school that I started really thinking this was the one for me and not anything else. So.
So more into my story. So like I said, I started on the saxophone.
Good choice.
And, I loved it. I loved every second of it. And then I was a nerd, typical of the rest of us. And my band director was like, why don't you try a different one? So I tried a bari sax, and I played that for 2 years. But it was huge, and honestly, it was kind of boring. Yeah. So then when I went to high school, I was always in love with the oboe, fun fact. And so I was like, well, why not? I'll just try it. And so I picked it up, played it for a year, and then my band director was like, well, no one's playing the bassoon. And I was like, well, what's that? And I said, it's another low instrument. I said, oh, no. I had already done like a bari sax. I was like, enough of the low notes. And then one day I was just bored, and my teacher was like, well, why don't you try it? And then been doing that ever since.
Nice. Yeah. So I originally joined band because my older brother had such a great experience in the school band playing a low brass instrument. Of course, I wanted to do the same thing. Unlike Jared, I wanted to do low brass like my brother, so I was going to sign up for tuba. Funny enough. And then my neighbor had a clarinet, and my dad was like, "Well, we could use that instead of renting the tuba." Dad, very frugal and honestly great choice. Not carrying that around in the truck forever. So I played the clarinet for years, and then at the end of high school I tried bass clarinet for the first time because our orchestra needed somebody to play it. And then I went away from it for a while until I did my master's in Boston, and I studied with a teacher who specialized in it. And so I kind of wanted to study that with him because that's what he did, and I really fell in love with it, and I bought one, and now I play clarinet regularly as well, so I double on both. Yeah.
My story is actually eerily similar to Tim's. Because at my school district, when I was young, they had a little instrument petting zoo, so the older high school kids came and everyone gave a little demonstration. And so I liked the sound of the clarinet, and I put that down as my first choice. And I put as the second choice the baritone, the little tuba, if you will. And I later found out that a friend of our family's had a clarinet they were willing to give to us, and I thought I could own my very own, I wouldn't have to borrow one. And so that's how I ended up playing the clarinet.
Yeah. Any other questions? Just a comment. I always look for synergy between music and prayer and poetry and so forth. And Steve, during the break, pointed out when I was talking about all the different religions and faiths and trees in the forest. And he said, hey, Dan, look at Splinter. And that, and just another observation here, in terms of diversity, bringing together a death metal chicken, an animal mask, and the goat rodeo. I mean, you can pull all that together, well done. So, okay, let's give, before we go, let's give a big round of applause. Three things on the way out. The next concert will be on May 6th, Saturday, May 6th, at 6, Saturday at 6. And it'll be another group of musicians from Stony Brook University, doctoral students. It'll be the Whitman String Quartet. They were founded at Stony Brook in 2015. They have participated in the Philip Seltzer String Quartet Intensive. Also in the first class of the Everson String Quartet Institute, studying and coaching in masterclass formats with all 5 recent members of the acclaimed Emerson String Quartet. They'll be performing works by Beethoven, Brahms, Mahler, Ziola, and Gordy, if I pronounced those all correctly, of the emergence. So that's Saturday, May 6th.